Hello everyone, welcome to the channel about fireproofing dwellings against the action of wildfires. I can't say this enough. Our main objective of this channel is to promote constructive solutions so we can save lives in the near future. So what we're going to talk today. Today we're going to talk about the ignition locations in dwellings when these are near or even far away from a wildfire. So some of our conclusions are known conclusions, they aren't new. For example, if you go to this YouTube video, you have a known observation that firefighters already knew this, and people that work in the wildland knows that the main cause of ignition dwellings may not be the direct contact of fire, but sometimes the traveling of firebrands in the air. So let's talk a little bit about that. So, as I said before in the previous video, this research project started due to the tragedy of the great wildfires of Portugal in 2017. Portugal was hit. It was even passing on CNN news and stuff like that because, unfortunately, with these wildfires, more than 140 people lost their lives. It was a big tragedy. Therefore, questions were raised for this tragedy. Even the government tried to do some studies to understand what went wrong. So the first known great wildfire is known in Portugal. I'm Portuguese. It's a tragédia em Pedrógão Grande. And the second wildfire is referred to as os incêndios de 15 de outubro. So these two wildfires promoted several reports about what the heck happened and how so many people die due to uncontrolled wildfire. So this is something that sometimes is expected in the science of wildfires. Unfortunately, Portugal has a lot of wildfires, and when you have years with less wildfires, you promote more fuel in the wildland, which means if there's even a small wildfire, it can rapidly spread in the next year. For example, we had big wildfires in 2003 and 2005, but then almost nothing happened until 2017. So we had a lot of green, and that time was like a lot of it was very hot. So what happens was our how should I say, our topographic conditions, our atmospheric conditions, and our, should I say, management of fuel, which is basically trees, was not the most correct. So we had like ungoverned forest fields in which there was no cutting grass, cutting trees, or cutting bushes to try to slow the spread of wildfire. So this is one of the big problems that happened in 2017 and can be easily, how should I say, be explained with this graph. So one of the first, I'm going to talk about the surveys that happened after these wildfires have occurred. The first report was elaborated by Professor Domingos Xavier, basically with a team made in ADI. Professor Domingos Xavier is very known in the science of forest fires in Portugal, also very known in Europe. He promoted the first reports, which some of the results I will present today. If you want to check more about his research regarding forest fire propagation, forest fire spread, you can go to their website and see what they basically do. The second report was promoted by an independent panel of experts in 2018. I'm not going to name every one of these professors, but you can go to their site and check that out. They're very known in their fields. And they also promote conclusions that were very similar to the ones promoted by the first survey. You can check out this report. You can go to our Assembleia da República. There's a link. I'll put a link in the comments below in which you guys can actually see how this report was elaborated. Just to realize these reports are all in Portuguese because they were promoted for the Portuguese government. The only report you have in English is the one published by Professor Fernando Branco, the head researcher of this research project, in which the team of Professor Branco analyzed the problem of the existing dwellings that had burned and the ones that also didn't burn, and the observations were made after the houses were rebuilt with the exactly same characteristics. Okay. You can also check, Professor Branco works at the SETI's Research Center, which is a research center held in the Department of Civil Engineering of Técnico. There's a link for the research project if you are interested, I'll also put a link in the description below. And Professor Fernando Branco was the head researcher, as I told, to promote publications. We already have some publications regarding what went wrong and what we can promote in the future to promote, how should I say, fireproof, characteristic, constructive solutions for houses in the wildland interface. So, the surveys, the results, part 1. So, using both of these 3 surveys we told you we made, there were easy conclusions. So, the biggest ignition, the biggest percentage of damage sources, depending on the type of ignition, were basically due to firebrand projection. There were about 61%. 21% were still direct fire impact, but the most of them was firebrand projection. It means the house didn't need to be near the wildfire to burn. Okay. There was also 13% burning materials in close proximity. Nearby a structure that was also burning. So this is very hard to defend himself. If your house may be secure enough against firebrand projection, if the next house starts burning, your house may burn too. And with damages, but also no ignition. So this 4% was very general. The second part of the surveys was percentage of damage structure, depending on the place of the ignition. So this is also very interesting, and the percentage is almost, how should I say, proportional, as you can see. So 62% on the roof, although this roof was more heavy, how should I say, the most heavy on ignitions and damage was on old roofs, wood structures. Okay. Then the windows, that most of them that burn and ignite were most made of woods, doors, and openings in the structure. Maybe ventilations also. Some old masonry walls may have an opening that firebrands may enter and may still promote some ignition. Okay. So here's another important survey. Part 3. The houses that burn were basically old masonry structures. Hardly, only 7% of the reinforced concrete houses actually burn. Okay, this is very important. So old houses made of masonry, walls, the roof, the structure of the roof is made of wood, are more likely to ignite when they're near or even far away from a wildfire. Okay, this is also a very important conclusion. The location of the ignition in the structure that was actually reported by the owners. So this was not directly by observation, it was asked directly by owners. 10% told started on the roof. 3% told roof, windows, and doors, and the other 2% doesn't know. We don't have the other percents because the other people we asked, they didn't know. So in any case, there's still a proportion. So, surveys, conclusions versus observations. Just by looking at those previous graphs, we told it's easy to look what happened here. So, you have non-burned dwellings and you have burned dwellings, in which it's easy to see that the below dwelling is, in fact, a new construction, new materials that are more fireproof than the above one, which was built with old materials. It's an old dwelling and had a wood roof structure, okay, made of old tiles. So this is the big difference. You can even see in this image, you had dwellings that burned near to other dwellings that didn't burn because they were newer. Okay, although there are some examples, there are some old dwellings that didn't burn. Yes, that's true. And you can actually see some of those old dwellings. Some of them had the fire really, how should I say, really close, but other ones, you can see those old dwellings there on the center. They didn't have the fire near them, but the firebrand projection probably throw the firebrand near the wood roof structure and the structure. And the dwelling was an old dwelling. Okay. Well, part 5. So, we also asked, what about the response about houses that would burn without trees in the 20 meters radius? This is very important because there are some rules in Portugal that say you need some radius between the, some distance between the trees and the house. Is that important? Well, it is, but not as much as you think so. So even houses that burned that were a distance of more than 20 meters from the fire is about 84%. And the interesting thing, if you ask did those houses burn due to firebrands? The percentage is almost exact. This is not completely exact, but almost exact, okay, because this is rounded. But basically, houses burned, the houses that burned, the dwellings that burned in these great wildfires, they were not close to the wildfire, okay? This is very important. Another survey conclusion and observation is we detected firebrand traveling for more than 2 miles, or 2 kilometers. So what happened here? Very easy. You had a wildfire, which was like almost 2 kilometers away from a dwelling, and that dwelling burned. It burned other parts of the forest, or should I say, between the location of the wildfire and the dwelling, but the firebrand was able to travel 2 kilometers, hit the dwelling, and start an ignition in that dwelling. It was probably an old dwelling, but it did start it anyway. Okay, this is another important conclusion of the surveys. So what are the critical ignition, the primary ignition points? It's easy. It's the roof, basically the walls, the windows, okay? But let's try to make it more detailed. For example, if you have a roof in which the material might be a little bit, how should I say, not quite fireproof, and it's a problem. If you have like a window in the roof or air in, how should I say, an air entrance for the attic, something like that, if the firebrand enters there, it will burn, okay? Then you have what? The windows, and you have the doors. These are made of wood. These are a critical point to start an ignition. The wall, if you have a wall made of wood, that was also the same problem. You don't have that type of protection against fireproof. In Portugal, this wasn't a big problem. It was more a problem of masonry walls. So if you had masonry walls, if they had an opening, the firebrand would go to the opening and start an ignition. And also, we detected the stairs, the porch, and also, for example, imagine you have this column made of wood, then this column made of wood was also an ignition point, okay? Then you have secondary ignition points, for example, vegetation, a garden near your house, ventilation system, maybe a window at the attic that was old, made of wood also. It also promoted ignition points, okay? These were the greatest conclusions in those 3 reports that I told you. So is this new? No. Okay, this is something everyone already says they know. This is a little bit like the Columbus egg history. So I'm not gonna tell this history. Google it if you wanted. But you can say, okay, this video presents nothing new. These reports from these 3 entities present nothing new. No, they do. Now, okay, no, they don't. This thing is new and new to the public, but no one has ever published or ever talked about them until now, okay? So, conclusions for the ignitions. Elements to fireproof. First, roof, okay? It's basically, as I told you, roofs, walls, windows, and doors. Roofs, its structure and openings must be fireproof, okay? So, if you can avoid a wood roof, avoid it anyway. Have a ceramic tile, okay? If you have openings in the roof, make sure all the perimeter is basically fireproof. Walls, try to avoid wood walls. If you have old masonry, as you can see this one here, which is a very weird old masonry, try to have all the openings covered. And if you have openings for ventilation in old dwellings, in new dwellings, try to put something like a metallic net or something like that to avoid firebrands to enter, okay? We will present in the future a video detailing more some of these, or should I say, some of these constructive the construction fireproof design guidelines, but at the moment I'm just talking about the conclusions of the surveys. And also the doors, windows, basically in the balcony, the porch, the entrance. If you have like old windows and doors made of roof, they will burn. Your porch may be wood and very beautiful, but if you get a lot of firebrands, your porch will burn, okay? So we have existing measures to prevent these ignitions. We already had a law, DL 124, 2006, sorry, I said that in Portuguese. And DL 76, 2017 was an update from the previous law. So What happens was, as I told you in the previous graph, if you go to that previous graph I told you about, what happened was, although a law existed in 2006, which is, how should I say, it's in line with the problem of the great wildfires we had in 2003 and 2005. They created a new law that says, okay, you need to cut your trees, you need to cut your bush, you need to cut your vegetation. There must be some distance between, how should I say, your trees and your house. Almost no one did nothing. So this happened in 2017. This great tragedy happened because our wildland forest field was completely uncontrolled. Okay, so what they did is they basically updated an existing law. So there was a law to protect the rapid spread of wildfires in the wildland urban interface, but nothing was done. So they updated. The government did a good work here by updating a new law that was more constrained for the people that own lands in the wildlands forest fields. Okay. So these existing measures, they actually are quite good to minimize the spread and to prevent some ignition in the dwellings when they're near or even far away from a wildfire. But as we saw on those reports, this is not enough. Okay, these things are not enough because they can still be hit by firebrands. So if your dwellings obey all of these rules in Portugal, if they are still not somehow fireproof against wildfires, they can basically, how should I say, they can obey all these laws. These are not the Portuguese law, they're similar, but they can obey all these laws and they will still burn due to firebrand protection. Okay, so this is a good image that typically shows you don't need to be near a wildland fire to have your dwelling ignite due to firebrand protection. Okay, this is an excellent image that basically shows that. So, constructive fireproof measures against wildfires. In Portugal, there are none. As I told you, there are for interior protection of dwellings, even exterior protection of dwellings. There are some rules, but against wildfires, completely zero. Although the previous measures that I talked about in 2006 and 2015, they were actually successful. No extra measure was taken regarding the characteristics of the dwellings that are actually in the wild urban interface. Okay, this is the big problem, because in Portugal we think, okay, we just need to clean the forest, cut the trees, cut the bushes, cut the vegetation, don't have any trees near a dwelling. This is not true. We still should have some constructive design fireproof guidelines for dwellings. Okay, and unfortunately, as I said this so many times before, dwellings that burned in 2017 were rebuilt with a similar characteristics, so it is likely these will burn again. I cannot say this enough. Rocket science, biology, and electronics have evolved to an outstanding level, but people continue to die due to wildfires. This is not normal. Okay, the science in fireproofing dwellings exists. Maybe we need some more studies, but it's not that difficult. And yet, no one does anything. Why does no one does anything? So, when I start entering this research area, I understand there was a political problem. I recommend you to go to this TED Talk, see this video, and understand why this is a political problem. Why people are not fireproofing the dwellings. Okay? My take on this issue, which is political. I'm a scientist. My take is irrelevant. I will not have an opinion on this channel about this political problem. Okay? As I seen during 2020, science is about debate. Okay? The science is not settled. Anyone who says I'm the science should be ignored. Okay? So when you look at this political view, if you see either the blue political view or the red political view or even the green political view, if they say they are the science, ignore them. Okay, I'm not going to take any issue on this problem. Okay, I'm still going to be focused on promoting fireproof construction guidelines for dwellings. That's it. So, politics should never guide science. Okay, I know politics run the funding, run the money, but it should never guide science. That promotes all our problems we had in 2020. Conclusions in our visions. Wildfires will always occur. We cannot stop them, okay? So we can try to use those rules of cutting the trees, the grass, trying to clean the bushes near the houses, but the wildfires will occur. We cannot stop them, okay? It's a natural problem, a very hard problem to control. That's why I recommend you to see the previous videos. Existing measures to mitigate the ignitions in dwellings in the wild-land-urban interface, they work. The science there is quite good, but they're inefficient and insufficient, to be honest, since most dwellings burn due to firebrand protection. So dwellings clearly need to be fireproof against direct fire or indirect fire contact, which is either fire contact, as I said, and indirect fire contact. Indirect fire action is basically a firebrand contact. So guys, that's all for today. The next video, I'll try to already present some conclusions regarding some constructive characteristics that you can actually do on your dwelling to prevent it to burn due to a wildfire. See you on the next video. Bye.